What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Pittsburgh Steelers Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing, man? Did you catch the Super Bowl last night?
Yeah, I watched it all. It was we was talking a little bit before the show. It was a very well played game, an exciting game between the two best teams, I believe, in each conference. And so it was exciting overtime game. So I enjoyed the game itself, even though didn't really care that much about who won or not.
Yeah, I was kind of in the same boat. I mean, I sort of cared a little bit. I didn't, you know, in my opinion, it would probably been best if they tied, but that's impossible. So, you know, I was kind of pulling for the Niners in this one. I know that they would tie the Steelers in Super Bowls and things like that, but my feelings on that, like if another team were to catch up to the Steelers or surpass the Steelers, is well, the Steelers need to go out and get another one. Then they can, then
Yeah.
they'll be ahead again. So that's kind of how I feel. So, looking at that game, I was a little disappointed in the ending. I thought that the Niners kind of gave that game away, but like you said, it was very well played. And we'll get into some of the details of that game and how it affects or how it reflects with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But before we do, let's talk about a little bit of breaking news that's just kind of coming out. It appears that the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mitch Trubisky have decided to part ways. This coming from Mike Garofalo. The Steelers and quarterback Mitchell Trubisky have decided to mutually part ways. Sources say the side spoke to assess the situation, and Trubisky 29 gets a fresh start over a month ahead of the start of the league year and free agency. What do you think about the move? I know that was something that a lot of people were anticipating, day after the Super Bowl. Are you surprised it's so quick?
I think it's the right decision. I think it's the Steelers are just class, and I believe that when they relieved Trubisky of his duties after those two debacle games he played, I believe it was evident that the Steelers and Tomlin were done with Trubisky, and so by doing this now, it gives him more time to prepare. Teams could include him in their guys that they're going after this offseason. And it's best for both teams because the Steelers, when they need to talk about what this quarterback room is going to look like, there was no doubt that Trubisky was not going to be a part of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only surprising thing about it to me is, well, now at this point, you only have Kenny Pickett on the roster as far as your quarterback going into 2024. I felt that the Pittsburgh Steelers probably weren't going to release Trubisky. I think they only saved just shy of $3 million. And I thought they were going to hold on to him in case, the Steelers ended up not getting, or re-signing a Mason Rudolph or getting one of these other quarterbacks to compete with Kenny Pickett. You have that, sort of fallback with Mitch Trubisky. So the fact that they did this now, do you think that maybe perhaps they've, they're coming close on a decision that, who they want as their quarterback to compete with Kenny Pickett?
Well, there's going to be a new quarterback room one way or the other. Just getting rid of Trubisky now is one way is to clear the room and let everybody know your intentions and do the best thing for Mitch Trubisky, who was a quality citizen, individual, and he was a good Steeler in the locker room and with the other quarterbacks. He's just not the answer. And so the Steelers, they're just fully committed to rebuilding this quarterback room. I think there's multiple options, ways they're going to go, but I think you're going to see for sure a veteran and probably a draft pick.
Yeah, I think that the draft pick is probably going to be happening depending on who they bring in. Well, let's go back to the draft pick. Do you think that draft pick is happening day one, day two? Is this a early draft pick, or is this a later draft pick that they can develop?
Oh, I think it's definitely going to be a mid to late round draft pick. They have so many needs. If you watch the Super Bowl and you watch both teams, and then you look at the Steelers, you can't think in any realm of reality that the Steelers are close to that level. To be able to compete on that level, they're going to have to build both sides of the ball. They're going to have to strengthen their roster, and then they might can compete on a level like the Niners did if they can find a quarterback as good as Brock Purdy. I mean, you got to give Brock Purdy credit. He played a clean game. He's not spectacular. He's not Patrick Mahomes, but he is a efficient, functional NFL quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Teams have won Super Bowls with quarterbacks less than Brock Purdy. And, you know, Mahomes just did a great final drive to win that game. And, of course, the mishap on the punt return, that was the biggest play of the game because that totally flipped the script. And then actually, though, the game got better after that point because it was much more competitive. And I actually enjoyed the game after the mishap. So, but yeah, the Steelers hopefully got a lesson and a touch of reality about how far they still are away from competing for a Super Bowl title.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when you look at both teams that were out there, both of those teams were complete teams. You know, they had an offense and a defense to complement their offense. And I think that's been something that's been missing from the Steelers. You know, for the last few years, it's been the offensive side that has been, you know, kind of dragging along and the defense dragging them, you know, with them. You know, late in
Daniel,
the season,
we gotta say amen to that.
all the coaching staff isn't up to that level. Oh, that's true. That's true.
That was incredible. The difference,
Mm-hmm.
the adjustments made throughout the game, not just at halftime. It was you know, you have to give credit where credit's due. Those were two quality franchises that played last night.
100%. You know, you had the defenses, you had the offense, and like the Ted said right there, you also have, you know, the coaching staff to go along with it. And you know, even though it was a low scoring game for the most part up until, you know, probably towards the end, and you know, went into overtime and took the entire overtime session for 2 drives.
Yeah.
Or the entire overtime quarter. I felt that it was a very entertaining game. I liked it. I liked the fact that it was, you know, back and forth. You know, I thought that when you know, in the first drive for the 49ers, they're getting down there and then they fumble the ball and then, you know, the Chiefs end up getting the ball. I thought that was going to be something that was going to turn the game around. Right. And it was going to be completely Kansas City. But no, you know, the 49ers stuck down. You know, I think one of the biggest, you know, things that affected the game as well is I can't remember the name of the linebacker off the top of my head, but number 57, I think he popped an Achilles there trying to get onto the field. And
yeah, Jerry Greenlaw.
Yes,
that was a huge play. I mean, it was just such a freak accident. When it happened, at first you kind of chuckled and he tripped over his own feet. He was so excited. But then you realize the reason he fell was he blew his Achilles.
Yeah.
And for a young man who's undersized, who, you know, that hit he had there in the first quarter, he put a wallop. I mean, he brings the pain. And he's so explosive in a short area. And so when he hits, he really puts everything into it. That's concerning for me because I think he's Pro Bowl level player.
Mm-hmm.
But you tear an Achilles, and that's the position that you play. It's one thing to be Aaron Rodgers or a player, you know. But if you are an undersized player who relies on your explosiveness, that Achilles injury could be killer moving forward in his career. Hopefully it's not. They've come a long ways now, but still it concerns me for the young man.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I mean, it's unfortunate. I saw it happen when he, you know, ran off the sideline. I know they were calling it a lower leg injury early on, and I could tell what it was because I myself have had the Achilles rupture, and I was like, yeah, that guy's down. And then for it to happen this late in the season, you're probably looking at him being back sometime mid-season at best.
Yep.
You know, Aaron Rodgers, like you mentioned, was able to come back, but he plays a different position, and he's not trying to tackle people and use that explosiveness like you mentioned. And so for him, you know, it's probably going to take almost close to that, you know, 9 to 10 months, maybe a year to come back. And
because you don't want to rush it.
I don't
because
know.
that's the worst thing he could do was rush it and then re-injure it. So, and like I said, Aaron Rodgers he supposedly could have played, but he never actually came back. That's an injury you cannot rush, and I think it would probably behoove him to miss a whole year to actually make sure that he maintains his mobility and his explosiveness. And it's also going to affect the Steelers. And you say, how's it going to affect the Steelers? Well, Owen Burks is their backup inside linebacker. And he's the guy that I thought the Steelers could maybe target in free agency because the Niners have some interesting decisions to make. They've got a lot of talented free agents that the Steelers will be looking at and other teams. And they can't afford everybody. That's the problem when you have that many superstars. So now the Niners are going to look at Owen Burks and be like, we need to keep him because Greenlaw's going to miss most of the season. So it was bad all the way around. I did not want to see Greenlaw get hurt last night for sure.
Oh yeah, it was. I think that was a big turning point as well. I think the defense kind of had, they kind of had the number of Kansas City. They were really struggling, and then after that, they kind of started to figure things out and started getting going. What do you think about that decision in overtime and the overtime rules in general? In the playoffs, it's both teams are going to have a possession no matter what, and so now it's not up to a coin toss. Now a lot of folks have said, hey, you're probably going to want to kick in that situation. That way, what you are up against. If you have to kick a field goal or if you have to go for it on fourth down, so you don't want to be in a situation where you're like the 49ers last night, where they're in the in the red zone, 4th and 4, and they're having to go for a field goal, and that's in that point, which ended up being what ended up losing the game because the Kansas City Chiefs go down and score a touchdown. So, what are your thoughts on the overtime rules and the decision to get the ball or receive the ball for the 49ers?
Well, that's the first time that's ever come into play.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 20. The playoff rules are different, and that even if you go down and score a touchdown, the other team gets a chance to go down and tie the game. Or I guess I don't know if they have to go for 2. If they do score a touchdown, I'd have to, because like I said, we've not seen it yet. Mm-hmm. And I hate the possibility of a tie. I hate ties in NFL games. I don't think there should ever be a tie. Mm-hmm. I think you should play until there's a winner. But I knew that the game could still end on a defensive score. But if the Niners would have scored a touchdown, the Chiefs still had an opportunity to go down and tie it. Yeah. So I was like, it didn't really hit me till the Chiefs had the ball. Well, now they know they got 4 downs because they're going to have to go for it, every 4th down, and till they at least get into field goal range to tie. And then you're like, oh man, the Niners should have deferred and let the Chiefs have the ball first. Mm-hmm. But I honestly don't think, there's rumors that the Niners were not that familiar with the new rules. Honestly, it had never happened. Mm-hmm. So we didn't. Now we know. Yeah. Now we can second guess. But I bet you, I'd be willing to bet that most of the people had no clue about that and would not have thought about what's the best strategic way to approach the new overtime rule. Because obviously, if they would have, the Niners would not have wanted the ball first.
Yeah. I think there was an argument there that the reason why they decided to get the ball first was because their defense was tired. They had just been on the field for a long period of time, and they were trying to get the Chiefs defense. Mm-hmm. They had been off the field for a bit, so if they're off for a little bit longer, they'd be well rested. And so, I think that they had a plan to run the ball, and they probably should have stuck to it. And giving it to McCaffrey, whether it be on screens or pass plays or runs, he was on his way of being that MVP. And they blew it. They also had a blocked field goal or a blocked extra point. Yep. That probably made a big difference at the end of that game as well. But, transitioning to, what else the Steelers can learn. And we talked about this. We talked about the quarterback position. We talked about, what Holmes was able to do. And we talked about the quarterbacks in the AFC that made the playoffs and that the Steelers are probably most likely to face. Now, we know that the Steelers are releasing Mr. Trubisky. There was some rumors this week that Mason Rudolph had basically stated out there that he's intending on getting a fresh start and that he's going to be looking elsewhere. What are your thoughts on that? Do you believe them? Do you think they're just that rumors, or are you thinking he's actually going to be taken off pretty soon?
I believe there's some truth to it. I feel like he probably has said that, he would like to get a fresh start. He's always been in Pittsburgh his whole career, and I don't know if it ever felt entirely like home because he didn't get a fair opportunity at times to compete for even the number 2 position, much less the starter. And there's bound to be some hard feelings there at ways, but I do know he really cares about his teammates and the coaching staff. But there's going to be a lot of changes there too, especially on the offensive side of the ball. There already has been. So, but it also could be part of the contract negotiations. Letting the Steelers know, hey, I'm not coming back for a hometown discount. I'm not coming back to do like Trubisky did this past year. I want a fair chance to start. I want to be paid money that is more in line with starters' money. And so he might just kind of be sending a message to the Steelers in the process, because there's been a lot of talk about what direction Steelers are going to go for that veteran. And there's nobody they can bring back that I know is a good fit for this offense, for the city, for the roster, like Rudolph is. So that gives him a little bit of leverage, and that statement might just be sending a subtle message.
Yeah, I thought so too, and I thought that the rumors of Ryan Tannehill might be a subtle message back. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, you want to play the game, then we have other options as well. All jokes aside, I think that Ryan Tannehill, those were the rumors, right? That because of his connection to Arthur Smith, Ryan Tannehill had his best years of his career under Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith, was the offensive coordinator during that time, and that was I think the only time he was the offensive coordinator. From there, he ended up becoming the head coach in Atlanta. So I would understand it. There'd be familiarity there. He would know and understand the offense, the jargon, the lingo, and he could help probably, get that, have that be learned to the other players on the team that much quicker. But I'm not confident in a guy that's 35 years old coming in, and he'll be 36, and he was just replaced by Will Levis, and threw a fit about it. Now, if he comes in, I think that means he's going to be the starter. He wanted to get out of Tennessee because he wasn't the starter. What do you think he's going to want to come here and be a backup to Kenny Pickett or any of those things? Plus, he's going to probably want a little bit more money than what Mason Rudolph is going to be asking for, because he's done more. He's been to a Pro Bowl. He's been to an AFC championship, things like that. So how strong or how likely do you think that if Mason Rudolph does walk, that the next Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback could be Ryan Tannehill?
Well, when I first started hearing the rumors weeks ago, when they started talking, I actually heard a couple of rumors even before Arthur Smith was hired. And now with Arthur Smith being hired, it kind of makes sense in ways. I've heard multiple people that are realistic about the situation. They're like, well, you could bring Tannehill in to be like a sounding board for Smith and help Pickett and help him transition to the offense, and little things secrets that Smith likes his quarterbacks to do and how he wants them to play. But in my opinion, nobody should be assuming that Kenny Pickett is the starter. I think that this is, as I've said, whoever comes in, it has to be an open competition. Unless the Steelers go and pull out all the stops to get a proven. See, Tannehill's past his prime. I mean, it's obvious. We all seen that. We've seen it last year. he is no longer a top line quality starter. I think he could extend his career as being a quality backup in an Arthur Smith led offense. But the problem is too many people's going to be like, whoever the starter is, they're going to be like, if they have a bad game, well, go to Tannehill.
Yeah.
And because of his connection with Arthur Smith. But if you watched what Tannehill did play last year, he wasn't very effective. He's not the same quarterback because he's up in age now. He's in his 30s. And his arm, it seemed like he's lost some mobility and his arm's strength is weakened.
Yeah.
So I'm really not interested in Tannehill unless he's willing to be that second or even third string quarterback. But I'm also not in the camp that I want to see Pickett come in, be the starter just because he was a first round pick, and have Tannehill be his caddy or his, kind of quarterback coach.
Mm-hmm.
So the Steelers are going to have decisions to make.
Mm-hmm.
And I see the only benefit I see from Tannehill is his experience in Smith's offense and being able to pass that knowledge along. But the Steelers need more than that in the quarterback room. They don't have a position for a guy who's mainly just another coach. So I would rather they avoid Tannehill and bring in people I think can actually compete for the position.
I agree with you. I think that's 100% true. Tannehill also in seasons past, when I think they drafted Malik Willis, he said that he wasn't there to be a coach to him or to, help him progress. So I'm not sure how much of that leadership aspect he's going to fill, being the new guy in a new place, obviously having that, respect and understanding with the offensive coordinator, but not with anybody else. And so, like I said, I hope maybe that was just another shot back at Mason saying, hey, we're going to give you a fair deal. He comes back saying he's got interest in a fresh start. Well, we got interest in other quarterbacks. I think that could be it. But we're going to take a quick break. We got some more breaking news that are coming out pretty quickly, and we'll get into that when we get right back. When we come back on the YouTube side, don't go anywhere. We're not going anywhere on the audio only side. We'll be back after a few words from our sponsors. And we're back with the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon. We're talking about the Super Bowl. We're talking about some rumors and breaking news, apparently, that just keeps coming in pretty fast. And, well, let's get into it. So the Pittsburgh Steelers have also released punter Presley Harvin and offensive lineman Chukwuka Okorafor. These are two positions that I think that, a lot of people thought that may be happening. How surprised are you that they're happening right now?
Man, they are really kind of cleaning house.
Yeah.
It's not springtime, but the Steelers are doing some spring cleaning.
Yeah.
Harvin, it's past time. I think we all agree. He's had 2 seasons to, kind of clean up his form. I don't know if it's a Danny Smith problem or what, but the Steelers punters always struggle. And then when towards the end of the year, to me, he signed his release note when he said that I focus on energy, not on fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to have good energy before he kicked the ball. And I'm like, oh, man. I mean, because his drops were all over the place. He wasn't physically fit. His belly got in the way and he couldn't see the ball when he struck it in the first place. Mm-hmm. And then he's shaking it all over the field. So that was a given. And Okorafor, whatever he said, and that was before Canada left. And I think he said something to the likes of, as long as you keep doing the same stuff, you're going to get the same results. And they said Tomlin hurt him. So his butt hit the pine, and he never sniffed getting off of it. So it doesn't shock me because I think you're talking about guys that are untradeable.
Yeah.
And I think the Steelers just wanted to have a fresh start, and they're cleaning house.
Do you think Dan Moore is safe?
It depends. I do not see him as a right tackle either. Now, I know that people have suggested that he could go to right tackle and be effective. The Steelers know far more than I. They're off, Meyer and those guys know whether they think he could do that. I've heard people say maybe move to guard. But to me, Samalu and Daniels is your two best linemen. I don't want to mess with that. You got a strong interior if you get a good center in there. And we know that Jones can play either side, but I think he is a left tackle. I think he'll be better on the left side. So, but Moore you can bring back is a quality backup with experience because he's had a lot of starts over there, and he's took a licking and kept on ticking. So I don't think that they'll cut Moore like this, but according for whatever he said, it pissed Tomlin off to this point.
Yeah. So I don't know how true it is. What I heard through a bunch of different places was that they were calling running plays within 2 minutes while the Steelers were down by 10. And I think he said something to the effect like, if you're going to be calling these type of plays, might as well kneel the ball.
And, I heard similar.
Yeah, and that's why they took him out and then replaced him with Broderick Jones. As far as Presley Harvin, I think that the writing was on the wall when the guy without a hamstring punted further than him.
It's so true. Yes.
When you're getting out punted by a guy who tore his hamstring, it's time to go elsewhere. You know.
Amen.
You learn to kick in the cold, or I don't know. I mean, maybe the NFL isn't for you, and it's unfortunate because he has a lot of potential, during the summertime, during the spring training camp, in dome settings, the guy can launch it, but, once it starts to get cold and the season gets long, the inconsistency becomes consistent, and the shorter punts keep coming out. Yeah. I'm glad the Steelers made that move. I think that this is a statement move saying, hey, first day after the Super Bowl, boom, you guys are gone. Yep. We're gonna get somebody else. When it comes to the punting position, do you think that the Steelers are going to address it in free agency, or do you think they go back to the draft to pick up another punter?
I honestly don't follow the punting position well enough to know who's coming out of college and who's available for agency. I really don't.
Yeah, me either.
All I want the punter to do is, well, nowadays he's got to be a good holder, and Harvin did a good job at that. I give him credit. But he's got to consistently help field position. That is the whole job of the kicker, is to, one, you got to have a quick release nowadays because, you can't be one of them slow-footed punters. It don't work. But you have to be able to outkick the coverage sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I thought Harvin was going to do great. I really did. I thought he'd at least mix in some boomers in there. Yeah. But it just seldom happened. And when he did hit a big one, it was never in an important moment. It was just like a normal part of the game. You're not even focusing on it. And you're like, wow, that was a 60-yarder. But usually when you needed one, you're backed up in your end zone and you needed him to kick the ball and, keep them on the other side of the field. That's when he'd shake one.
Yeah.
He was consistently inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a good – I mean, the Steelers are such a loyal franchise, and they give people chance after chance. I can't think of another place in the NFL that would have give him 2 years to try to figure it out.
I don't either. I mean, even at that, I mean, I don't know anybody who would have gone into that, that playoff game against Buffalo with Presley Harvin, given his recent track history in those recent games leading up to it.
Yep.
They had acquired Brad Wing, I believe, on the practice squad. They could have elevated him or even have done this at that point, cut Presley, put in the Wing, and had a better showing than what they had, in my opinion. But the one thing that I will say that I'm pretty, I don't want to say sad, but I wish I could have seen was I thought he was going to throw the ball.
Never happened.
Never happened. That was part of his, his hype video when it came to him getting drafted. He's throwing a 60, 70-yard ball down the sideline, and it never happened. So we'll see if he gets picked up elsewhere. I think that somebody will eventually will. When you're a punter that's getting drafted, he's probably going to get another opportunity. Chicks Core 4, probably the same thing as well. Now these are positions that have to be filled. For me, as far as the punting position, there is that guy, Matt Ariza. I know he has some baggage with him.
The punt god.
Yeah, the punt god.
Yeah.
But apparently if you follow the case, he it found out that he wasn't involved at all. I guess they had video of him somewhere else when she had alleged that he was involved in something. And so, with that being said, if there's video of him elsewhere, why not bring him in? Bring him in for an opportunity. If he was a victim of somebody, I'm not going to say it's a false accusation, maybe perhaps a misidentification, and bring in somebody like that. As far as the offensive lineman goes, that's going to be a position of interest. I'm not sure, what free agents are going to be out there for the right tackle position. But what do you think about that position? Is that going to be addressed through the draft or free agency?
Well, now Reza, I want to comment on him real quick. There was a punter I did pay attention to when he was at college because he could place kick too. And he's just got a lot of talent kicking the football. And it's a shame that what happened to him, which it sounds like it was fabricated 100%. And I think it's even been admitted to since then. But the damage can be done. I think a team like the Steelers, with some of their past history, probably didn't want to reach out and try to be interested in him because they don't want to, they don't want any more of the drama. But if the man is innocent, I think he deserves a chance. I think somebody needs to give him a chance. And the Steelers have need at punter. So I'm like you. I mean, give the guy an invite, see what he can do. As far as Chooks in the right tackle situation, if you're a team that just isn't very physical and you don't rely on your offensive lineman to be very physical, a core four can work because he's just not intense. You cannot make him mean. You cannot make him mad. I keep thinking it's going to come out. We're going to see it eventually, but he's just not that way. It surprised me he even said what he said because he's such a laid-back personality. And I think that's always going to hinder him. I'm not as impressed with the right tackles in free agency. There's really nobody I can say, well, there's an instant upgrade. There's Beckman. I may probably butchering his name from the Jets, who's been an underachiever. He was a top 10 draft pick, and he's never lived up to that. But he's a massive human being who would be a good fit on the right side at tackle. But now I'm afraid that his cost, because there's not much out there this year. So I'm much more inclined to see the Steelers go draft pick. I would like to see, honestly, a first round pick on a tackle and a second round pick on the center. Because for Arthur Smith's offense to be effective, he has to have that offensive line. And there's Fiaga, there's Mims, there's Latham. There's multiple guys this year in the first round of the draft that I think you come in and start for the Steelers at right tackle.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with all the tackles in the draft. I think that you can probably get one in the later rounds if you're looking at the right side. I don't think it's necessarily a move you have to make in the first round. I'm not sure if the Steelers are going to go tackle, 2 years in a row. But I do think that the center position is a high position in need. I think when you do have a Dan Moore and you do have a Broderick Jones who can play on the right side, that kind of gives you a little bit more of a leeway to maybe perhaps address the center position before you address the tackle position. And that I think that maybe perhaps they go defensive line in the first round, which would make sense. I think you need somebody else to help out Keanu Benton. He's going to be a guy that's coming up. Cam Hayward, I'm sure they're going to restructure him. He's indicated that he wants to come back. I don't think the Steelers are going to cut him. Do you think he's going to get a restructure, a deal? How do you think the Cam Hayward situation is going to work out?
Well, I know that Colbert kicked the can down the road for so long. And then when the pandemic hit and, the salary cap was reduced, the Steelers were in the worst
I'm not sure. I think he froze.
Oh, were you back?
Yeah, you're back. You're back. You
Okay,
froze there.
I just lost the whole screen and everything.
Yeah, no, it was fine. There was some
But
upgrades.
but yeah, I think that the Con and company do not want to kick the can down the road.
Mm-hmm.
They do not want void years.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an unusual situation. You've come to the end of a contract with a guy of Cam Hayward's stature where you're going to be on the line for paying him far more than he's worth by his performance last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't, I'm not talking about his value off the field, but on the field, he was not a difference maker. And he's due $22 million. That's difference maker money. So, what can the Steelers do? Well, everybody talks about they can add a void year and spread it out to where it wouldn't be such a huge hit this year. And I feel like that's what they're going to do, because I'd rather see Cam take a restructure and for less money, but that said he refuses to do that. And he just won Walter Payton Man of the Year, well deserved, very proud of him. But that's what he does off the field and on the field. But on the field this year was a down year for Cam Hayward. He's a great player, but he wasn't this year. And he's only going to be older next year. And once those injuries start, a lot of times it hinders guys in the latter part of their career. So I think you'll see a void year added, but I don't think that's going to be a habit with the Steelers moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's possible too. I don't think the Steelers are just going to, cut him and that's going to be the end of it, or I don't think he's going to take a pay cut. He's already, like you said, emphasized that wasn't going to happen. But I do think that the Steelers are a loyal organization, and they're going to stick with him, and as long as he wants to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I mean, like I said, congratulations to him on being the Walter Payton of the Year award, getting the Walter Payton of the Year award. That was a great accomplishment from him, and but going back to to the draft and to the offense here, what other moves do you think are next? Who else is going to be next to fall down as being cut? Who's the next casualty?
I was kind of shocked that Allen Robertson wasn't involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what Allen Robertson was paid, but I do know what he's due. And they brought him in to be a locker room leader and example, and they thought he could be that tough third down slot guy. He just don't have it anymore. I don't think anybody would argue that. Allen Robertson is not the player he once was, and I believe that he is definitely going to be released. If you'd asked me who would be the first three guys to be released, we talked about it on our Pump Your Brakes podcast.
Mm-hmm.
We all agreed Trubisky, Okorafor, and Allen Robertson. We weren't even thinking about Harvin being one of the first, but I think Allen Robertson could be next.
Good deal. I think that, and I agree with Steeler Lee. Levi Wallace, potentially one of the guys that could be next to be out of the Pittsburgh Steelers organization and to be looking elsewhere.
But have you heard the rumor? The rumor is the Steelers want him back.
Really?
I can't imagine it. I mean, I don't know who started the rumor. It might have been Levi Wallace's agent, but I just don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want him. I don't want him part of that cornerback room next year.
Right. Yeah, and me either. I don't either. I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers need to address that position with somebody with speed. Yes. I think that that's one of the things that they're lacking when it comes to the secondary right now is the speed aspect. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is probably going to be your guy that has the speed. Outside of him, everybody else is, 4.5-ish, if not 4.6.
At best.
Yeah.
Wallace can't run a 4.5.
Who's that?
He ran a Wallace.
Oh, no.
He ran a 4.6 something coming out of Alabama, and he ain't got faster.
No, he has not gone faster. I mean, there's reasons why he's going to be, what do you call it? There's reasons why he was a walk-on. There's reasons why he wasn't drafted, and that has to do a lot with it.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I think the Steelers need to get another cornerback. That should be something of high priority. I wouldn't think first rounder unless somebody tremendous falls, right? And that's the best player available, because I think that's where the Steelers need to go this year in the draft. This best player available.
Yeah.
Obviously, relative to their needs, but they really should target the best player, given especially the amount of holes that they have. And
Well,
one,
me and you have talked some already.
mhm,
I want them to address this offensive line situation
mhm,
because if you really want Arthur Smith and whoever the quarterback is to have a chance, they've got running backs. They got all. They got to change the wide receivers because you got to have bigger body receivers in Arthur Smith's system. So they need to address wide receiver for sure, a free agent and a draft pick. So they only got so many picks. So that's why I'm thinking like I'm thinking.
mhm.
If you had a guy, they seem to like Quentin Mitchell from um, shoot, I can't think where he played in college, but he's like the number one cornerback guy. Tomlin showed interest in him. I would rather see the Steelers go for a sure thing and go for one of the top 2 or 3, like Johnson from the Bears, Swede from last night for the 49ers. He's going to be available. And then there's another guy. They need those guys to come in to immediately start across from Joey Porter Jr. Because, as you say, the secondary was just too slow. But if you have Porter Jr., you have that free agent, you have Trice, hopefully, can't count on him, but have Trice, have Darius Rush from last year who worked in and out a little bit. That's the makings of a good cornerback room. So, and I just think that that's something where they, as you said, center and cornerback have to be upgraded.
Yeah, and I think one of the other positions is middle linebacker. There's a lot of holes on this team,
Yeah,
and
too many.
yeah, there sure is. And the middle linebacker position, I'm not sure, how Cole Holcomb's, if he's going to be coming back from his injury. I haven't heard anything how he's doing in
But that
rehab
was
or any of those
nasty.
things. Yeah, it was not a.
It was
It was
nasty.
it was a nasty injury. Those are the injuries that can really hurt a player's career if he can't get back to the level that he was prior to the injury. And then the Steelers are going to be stuck with the middle linebacker position as a big hole as well. I don't think Quan Alexander is going to be coming back. He's gotten his second Achilles tendon rupture, one on each leg now, and so
Ooh, that's not good.
yeah, it's not good. And he came back from the first one. He was a productive member for the Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker crew. In fact, some would argue while he was in there, he was probably, or maybe, the best middle linebacker that the Steelers had all around, able to cover, tackle, and put his face in the pile. I think that position needs to be addressed. I would hope that they address it with youth. I think they maybe this past year and the last maybe couple of years have been an example of, or a lesson to the Pittsburgh Steelers, that when you go and get these guys that have been in the league for a little bit longer, given the nature of the physicality of the position, that durability is going to be an issue, especially if you have an offense that struggles to maintain possession of the ball.
Yep.
So I'm thinking they probably need to address that with the draft. I'm going to look at who's available and who's out there. But off the top of your head, or in your mind, would you prefer that one to be addressed by the draft, free agency, or you want to see what Cole Holcomb can do when have him come back?
Well, I've talked about it pretty extensively in some recent articles. The Steelers have got to find their next young alpha stud in the middle. All their great defenses down through the years have always had that guy, and they don't. And with Shazir's tragic injury, they have not had that guy. Vince Williams was the last guy they actually drafted and developed, and he developed into a solid, if one-dimensional player. Since then, they've tried everything. They've moved up in the draft to get Devin Bush, who was the wrong Devin, And they took a guy who played like a small safety. He was just not the answer, as we've seen. They've drafted other guys in the later round and tried to do a catch lightning in a bottle again, like they did with Williams, but they haven't been able to develop anybody. So finally, the store's like, we've had enough of this. So they bring in Holcomb and Alexander and Roberts. And I was happy with that. But you say, man, these guys are so good. Why are they available? Well, they're available because they're injury prone. These are veteran guys that are injury prone. And sure enough, right there in the middle of the season, Holcomb was playing his best football. And he was starting with Alexander. That was the best the inside linebacker position had looked for the Steelers in years. And sure enough, 2 weeks in a row, one goes down with friendly fire. Holcomb, that leg ain't supposed to be like that, folks.
Mm-mm.
And that scares me for his future. And then Alexander, as you said, tore the other Achilles. And it was hard enough to come back from one. So Roberts was consistent all year, but he battled injuries, which when you're that style of player, he's knocking people out. I mean, he brings the load when he comes. But those guys get injured more often. So that's why you need that young guy. So I'm like you. I'd like to see an early pick in the first 3 rounds at least. And this is not the year, though. Last year, there was a lot of free agents the Steelers could have went after. And they went cheaper because they had so many needs. So now you have injuries to the top 2. So, again, you're looking. But this year ain't deep at middle linebacker or inside linebacker, this free agents class. And the draft class is varied. You have some guys that are one-dimensional, which is not really what the Steelers need. So you're going to have to take a chance. It's it seems like the years the Steelers are really looking for one position. Like this year, we could say center, cornerback, inside linebacker. It's not strong years in free agency or the draft for those positions. The center, there's 3 top guys in the draft, and the Steelers need to get one of them.
I agree. The Steelers definitely need to get, the trenches going again, offensively, defensively, the middle linebacker position. There's a cornerback position. Everybody's been talking about the quarterback position. Some people have been indicating that they need another wide receiver. A lot of holes. Also,
they definitely need a receiver.
Strong safety as well to help out with Minka. So it's going to be an interesting offseason. They're already making moves, cutting some people already. I wouldn't be surprised if the Steelers start making other moves to sign some of their free agents of their own that they can sign now at this point. I'd be interested in seeing that. Before we let everybody go, and I want you to tell us, about what you have going on. I know you have Pump Your Brakes and stuff, but one of the questions I keep seeing in the live chat is, were you breakdancing with the homies during the halftime show?
I don't know what they're talking about that. Now, Tate and Big G are far better dancers than I am, so they might have been cutting the rug. I don't know. I could dance a jig. I am part Irish, so, but as far as the breakdancing, no, I would actually break something if I tried to do that. So.
That is awesome. You're going to be on the on Pump Your Brakes on Wednesday. Do you have anything coming out on the website?
Yeah, well, I'm working on an article how the Steelers need to seek safety this offseason. And it's a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek title, but as you mentioned there about some of the needs, the Steelers definitely need a strong safety and quit trying to force poor Fitzpatrick to be everything on the back end of that defense. He needs his help back. Somebody said bring back a Terrell Edmonds. I'm all for it. I'm afraid they burned a lot of bridges and insulted him by not giving him what he wanted, which all he wanted was some stability, 2 to 3 year contract, and they refused to do it. So, but you never know what could happen. But I definitely would like to see a strong safety come to town because we need one.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely do think that as well. I'd like to see Minka go back to being that ball hawk and really,
Yes.
see him making those splash plays that we're used to and accompanied by seeing. Well, guys, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Please hit that like button and subscribe button if you hadn't done so already. But we're out here. With that being said, Shannon, take us out.